Welcome to the Live Full, Work Fun podcast. This is the show to encourage you to live your life to the fullest and do fun work that fuels your lifestyle. Hi, I'm your host, Gayla Scrivener. Every week, you'll be introduced to amazing guests, useful resources, and inspirational stories. You'll discover opportunities and perspectives to shape your version of living full and working fun. Hi there, and welcome to the Live Full, Work Fun podcast. This season, we're exploring the theme, Don't Let the Start Stop You. It's a powerful reminder that while beginnings can be daunting, they're also the gateway to growth, success, and happiness. Throughout this season, we are discussing how to push through those initial difficulties and take that important first step towards your big goals, even when it feels overwhelming. I'm Gayla Scrivener, joined by my co-host, Fran Attilio. Hey there, Fran.
Hey, Gayla.
In our own journey, we always have these times where there's like a hump to go through, and we're letting that stop us. And I don't know about you. Well, I do kind of know about you. We're both into personal development and growth. So we like to learn from others. We're always reading books and drawing gems from other folks. And I think that is a great place to start for today, talking about other people's frameworks to help mold our own journey. And when I say frameworks, as far as how does someone else do this, they're giving us advice. I read a lot of business books, you do too, personal development books. And I thought we could start by sharing maybe 2 or 3 resources, books, or authors that really resonated with us, and why. At that point in time, why did their framework speak to us and help us get over that hump and not let the start stop us? What kind of framework or author or book really resonated with you?
So the very first one that comes to mind is actually the second one, but I'm going to start with her. But it's a book by Rachel Hollis called Girl Stop Apologizing.
I've read that one, yeah.
It was such an aha moment. There's a moment in the book where she says, so I was listening to it. I was in my last job and I had driven to Virginia to have a client meeting. On the way home, driving on this very dark, barely lit road going back home to New Jersey. And I put the book on and she says, and I had been thinking about at that point that I was miserable. My job wasn't what it used to be. I was not clicking anymore with the people in my company. Life was just feeling weird. I felt like I was missing out on my girls' lives and there's all this stuff happening. I just felt in this stuck place. The audiobook is playing and she goes, if you're waiting for the perfect moment, I'm paraphrasing. She goes, if you're waiting for everything to be all lined up and ready to go to start living your dream, you're going to be waiting forever. And I pulled the car over. I was like, what? And I know that's something that to a million other people out there, that's obvious. And it's literally the topic that we're talking about this season. Don't let the start you. She goes, right now, that's the moment you start. And I went home and I wrote my first piece of my dream for my business. And literally, I can trace from that moment the dominoes that fell. It was after hearing that and writing that was the October that I met my friend, and outside, it was just weeks later that I met him for a lunch that changed my life and I started my LLC. But that moment, I was waiting for the perfect moment. I was waiting to have so much in my savings, or I was waiting for my girls to be a certain age. I was waiting for something to happen with my husband's job. Nope, stop waiting because you'll wait forever. And it was like, it was just this most life-changing moment.
Isn't it interesting how you might have heard those words elsewhere in bits and pieces, but in the context and in that moment, your mind and you received it with open arms and it made a significant change in your life?
I love what you said. Those of us who love to read and love to learn, I think that's the key, is that there's this openness to receiving new information. And I do think everybody has a desire to learn. So whether it's audiobooks or reading physical books or however you want to, or following someone that's inspirational to you on social, whatever the medium is, it's such a powerful thing. Now, we talked about offline that you knew Rachel Hollis and you knew that book. What about you? What's your first?
I'm going to talk about my business in the context of I was really struggling on how to budget and finance, with financials for a business when all of my adult life I had been paid every 2 weeks. And yes, it was a stable amount. Right. And I had it every 2 weeks paycheck. Being an entrepreneur, that doesn't happen that way. And sometimes you have highs and sometimes you have lows. And how do you manage that? And I came across and heard of Profit First by Michael Michalowicz. And that really helped me a lot because Dave Ramsey is one that a lot of people follow, and he talks about the envelope method and budgeting, but that seemed to fit for someone that got a paycheck every 2 weeks. And I just could not wrap my head around how to do such things. So, with his book, Profit First, his framework was suggesting how to open up specific bank accounts. One bank account is that you put all your income in, then another for like profit, and you have a certain percentage for profit. You have a different bank account for taxes, and then you have operation, and then you have like owner's pay or something like that. How he did it, I got started and I hardly had, any income going, but I got started on his framework and opened my bank accounts. And the philosophy was put all of your income in the income account. And from there, that account does not have a debit card, no checks, no nothing to it. You only transfer certain percentages to the other accounts. So you figure out, okay, 10% goes to profit and that's set aside, 10% to taxes and whatever percent. And you figure that out for yourself. I started just the habit of like 1% to go to profit, 1% goes to tax, and then do that. But I started his framework and I adapted it over time to make it make sense for me. And now, 7 years doing it, I've just now adapted my bank accounts a little bit differently now so that I can set aside some money in like money market accounts and things like that. But that framework of getting that habit of never touch the income account with paying out expenses or anything like that. And sure, there were times that I felt like I was robbing Peter to pay Paul, but the habit of doing it and that framework that really changed my life on that. And I believe that that framework is a good one. I recognize that some of the pieces didn't kind of fit with the way my thought processes were. But overall, I thought it was great.
I love that you said that because this disclaimer should be applied to everything that we encounter from a learning perspective, whether you are 10 or 100. And even listening to our podcast, take what works for you and leave the rest. Often, I've even finished books, Gayla, that I was like, I don't agree with anything in this book, but I'm going to finish it because what it did is valid. It helped me validate what I did believe, think, want to do. While sometimes information can be challenging or even difficult to read, it's sometimes good to get a little uncomfortable and read through those things because it helps you know for certain what you want to do or how you want to do it.
And well, I think that processes or frameworks that other people lay out because it's worked for them, I think that if we want to be all in, we should try it how they lay it out and then adapt to the way we think. Because I've gone through courses and I know that if I'm not all in and then do what they tell me to do, then the outcome is never going to happen.
Right, right, right. Especially if you're paying for a course. I was more referring to like a book and just reading a book, but
Exactly. Oh,
a
yeah.
100%, if you buy a course, you spend the money to do something, and the whole time you're like, oh, I don't like this, or oh, and you're just like being all negative. And the key is that openness, right? Open to receiving information. And oftentimes, actually, that kind of makes me think of my second book that I was going to mention.
Yeah.
The openness part often has to do with our own fears and sometimes self-sabotaging behaviors. Because when we hear something new or different, our brain goes, oh, you were wrong. But you weren't wrong. There's just somebody who thinks different. The other book was well before any of this even happened. I credit this book with being the first little pixie dust that was
Hmm.
sprinkled on me. And my oldest daughter was in, I guess it was seventh or eighth grade, and got accepted to this, or maybe it was high school. Maddie, I apologize right now for not remembering the year. But we went to this convention. They had all these amazing speakers, but one blew me away. And to this day, I can close my eyes and see him on the stage. His name is Sean Stevenson. And he wrote the book, Get Off Your Butt, but spelled B-U-T, How to End Self-Sabotage and Stand Up for Yourself.
Wow. Nice.
And this gentleman, just give you a very quick backstory, was born with a very severe illness, the one where and I forgot the name of it, but it's where your bones break. He had very brittle bones. I think it's called brittle bone syndrome. He had broken every bone in his body before the age of 10. They didn't think he'd live. He made it to quite an older age. I want to say he was like in his 40s. He married, he worked for the White House. This man did everything that the world had told him he was never going to do. And to see him on stage, and I saw him twice, you have to Google him and just listen to him. It's like you're looking at what visually we're told that person shouldn't have gotten and done anything with their life. And he did so much. And all because he believed he could. It was just the most powerful thing to see. So for me, in my mind, to look at this man who was so positive, there was nothing he couldn't do. And it didn't mean that he wasn't going to always be successful, but he wasn't going to not do something because of messages in his head. He was going to give it his all. And if you listen to his stories, it's absolutely amazing. But the description of the book, I just want to read this one part, and it says, Get Off Your Butt shows how to overcome excuses for emotional paralysis, build self-confidence at work and at home, and achieve a higher level of success in career and in relationships. This was my first exposure that my mindset could improve all parts of my life, personal and professional. And I will never forget, I wrote in my journal for like days after seeing him. If you Google him, unfortunately, he has passed, but he was such a light in this world. And I will never forget, I bought all my girls a copy of his book. I shared it with friends. It was the book that absolutely turned my life around. So, and his framework sticks with me to this day.
That's helped you develop your mindset,
Mm.
right?
It's at the root of adapt and flow. Adapt and flow, I credit it to my father, but I know that Sean Stevenson's framework is in there, because the idea of if I can, I will, and if I can't, I will adapt summarizes what he taught me in that book. Everything about my strategy there's definitely a spark left by him in my adapt and flow beliefs.
In my journey in learning copywriting, I had no idea in my whole life that I would be drawn to writing. And I found myself needing to improve my writing skills so that I could better serve my clients and help them in their content creation. And so I came in contact with this gentleman named Ray Edwards, and he had his book called How to Write Copy That Sells. His framework for his copywriting is called PASTOR, and each of the PASTOR, that is an acronym for his framework. And I still use that to this day. I'm not going to create my own copywriting framework because that's not what I want to do. I wanted to improve my skills. So I was drawing from someone else. As you know, and as everyone knows, that I am a story brand guide as well. That was Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller, that book. He has his framework that has helped me improving my writing over time. And then there's other authors. And then I take these pieces and utilize the pieces that would work in that scenario. I go back to the original works to remind myself because I stray and it's like, oh, why am I making this so difficult to myself? Because these people that have came before me know how to write copy. I can just use their frameworks and be able to make life easier for me. Now, that does not mean that I am going to be teaching other people to copyright. That's just not what I want to do. But it did help me formulate my own framework for implementation. I thought about things like, oh, I think I could put this into an acronym and I think I can do this and better communicate what implementing content really means. So those types of books really helped me to upscale my skills, uplevel my skills, then adapt them to the situation. Because you don't need to be salesy in all, but you need to be persuasive in some writing. You need to be a journalist in other writing. It's very interesting. I really like it.
That's awesome.
Now, I would expect your yoga experience is a whole framework.
I have been debating, sitting here going, should I offer this one? But I will say my third book, which is the most recent of the ones with the most powerful effect, was the Yoga Sutras, which written by Patanjali. Now, what's really funny, like many older books from the Bible to Shakespeare, there's debates on Patanjali and if he was real and existed. And I don't care. What I care is the writing in the sutras. For me, that book changed my life. I was not actually practicing yoga at the time. And finding the sutras, though, offered me something that no other organized system had ever offered me. And the difference for me with the Yoga Sutras versus anything out there in society, and I'm not going to like target organized religion or anything like that, but anything organized, the sutras say, hey, here's this concept, non harming. What does that mean to you? What are you going to do with it? They don't tell you how to do it. There's no instruction manual. And it was like the first time that a book on such a big topic as philosophy and how we're supposed to lead our lives, they put it in my hands and they said it was up to me to interpret that information and choose. Everything is on the individual to say, how do I see this? How do I practice it? And that's the other word. It is a practice. It is something that your days you do okay, and some days you don't do so okay, but you keep using it as learning. There is no, I don't want to target any religion, but there's no heaven or hell. This is just, here are some concepts on how to live your life that are rooted in do no harm to yourself as well as others. So that's where those self-sabotaging thoughts and self-deprecating thoughts come in. So do no harm to yourself or others and treat everybody else the way you want to be treated. And in order to do that, here's a whole bunch of ideas. You navigate them. It's a book that you don't just read cover to cover. You explore and you think and you contemplate on. And also, that book gave me a gift because I grew up believing that love should be the default and that we should treat each other with kindness. And love is always the answer. And I received a lot of messages from life up until finding that book. That was naive. That was a little girl's way of thinking. And guess what? That book proves that I was right all along, and love is always the answer. And you can live from love and treat everybody with kindness. It's not easy. It's something that you have to work at. So you have to be willing to do the work. And I think for me, that's how the Willingness Warrior came about, because you have to be willing to try again and to say, okay, didn't happen perfectly. Or, hey, I did that okay. Let's keep doing that. Yeah, that book, it's everything to me. And I haven't finished exploring it. And there were some, I will tell you, there are some sutras that you were like, you get a reaction to, especially as a woman, because it was written by two men at a time and a different culture. So you have to really take the message at its core and leave some of the rest. I think sometimes the things that challenge us or cause that feeling of discomfort are some of the best things. It's like the things we don't succeed at or that we fall down on are some of the best lessons in our life. Those things that challenge our thinking, I think, are some of the best. And that's what the sutras have done for me. And it's changed my life.
I like that you said that. Challenge your thinking. We need to be open and receive these other people's frameworks. And what you said was the perfect word. It's organized thoughts. It's the organization of how they perceive whatever the problem is, how their mindset. It's organized. And being open, because we pick up a book, we follow a person for some reason that there's something that we want to do differently in our lives. But then if we come and approach these lessons as I already know everything, I I'm just, I'll read this. It was recommended to me, yeah, but you're not truly open. And so being open to practice, that's another word that I picked up on that you said. It's organized and then practicing what they do. And it's uncomfortable to do something a little bit differently. And so when we try it and do it, then we can customize to fit our needs.
I got to tell you, Gayla, as you're writing this, an acronym is forming, I think, because I think organized practice, explore, right? You're exploring how that works for you. We just need N, and we've got our own new acronym for
We're
open,
open.
which is what you
Ah,
need to be to learn. And organized doesn't mean rigid. That's one thing I just want to clarify about organized. We can go too far and try to control or we take someone's practice and we try to follow it to the letter. Look what you talked about in the first example with your bank accounts. You didn't follow it to the letter. You took it and you said, okay, I am open to trying this, right? I'm going to use this organized system and I'm going to put it into practice. I'm going to explore how it works for me. We're going to figure out what that N is and share it with everybody. But that's what it is. And it really, the one thing I just wanted to clarify is organized doesn't mean rigid, but there is process, right? Even in Patanjali Sutras, he does give a list of things that are like the yamas and the niyamas of how you live your life. They're not the only, like you have to be open to exploring them. There is an organized list, but we're somewhere on this. There's an end coming.
mm-hmm. There's an end coming. We're really into acronyms. So all of these things help us organize our own frameworks that we're teaching and we're communicating to others. Because what works for us, we are so passionate that it can work for others. Well, I am so glad that everyone was here with us today listening, and we hope that you're inspired by this episode and that you take action. What is your framework that you're developing for your life? What is that one book that you're reading right now? We'd love to hear. Any final words, Fran?
I second that about sharing books and hearing what other people are reading. And I encourage our listeners to drop a comment on the podcast if they have an idea for what N should be.
That's right. Right.
We can make it a group effort.
Yes. So remember, every successful journey begins with that first step. Don't let the start stop you from pursuing your dreams of creating a business and life you desire. Until next time, live full, work fun.